Hey, this is Anne Marie, the anti HR lady, and welcome to my first ever live on the anti HR channel. And the name of this live is Can HR Do That? And in this live, I'm going to answer questions that people have posed to me about things that the HR department has done that they're trying to figure out whether they're allowed to do it. This necklace is like shining. Ugh. Um, and so in this live, I'm going to try to answer your questions about whether something that HR has done they can do. Now, the ground rules for this live is that when I announced the live several weeks ago, I put up a post in YouTube community and I instructed folks to submit their questions through that post or through the follow-up post that I did, and people did that. And so the questions that I am going to answer are going to be the questions that people asked me um, by attaching their question to that um, post. So it's not going to be questions you get to ask off the fly in the chats tonight because that will be too hard for me to manage if people are like putting all these questions in the chat. So I decided to give you an opportunity to submit the questions. That way I get to also vet the questions ahead of time. And then I will answer the questions that make sense and that actually apply to HR because, of course, some people submitted questions that had nothing to do with HR. And so I'm not going to answer those questions. Some questions, if it's related to a specific issue you're having at work and you need to get advice, then you need to go to my website and book a discovery call. But if it's just a general question about HR, that others can benefit from. My sweater looks off. Here we go. Um, that others can benefit from. That's what the purpose of this is, so that people can ask questions. Sorry, y'all. I'm just seeing all kinds of things on this camera now, and it's bothering me. Okay. So if the question is something that can apply to lots of people and be helpful, that's the purpose of this. Right now, I'm going to do it once a month. We'll see how this one goes, and then I'll decide if I'm going to do it again. And then if I decide to do it again, whether I'm going to do it just once a month or more than once a month or so on. So we'll see how it goes. But I have the questions listed and I'm going to just kind of go through them. I'm not necessarily going to do them in the order that they were submitted, but I'm just going to ask question, answer the questions. I'll tell you what the question is. I'm not going to say who it's from, but if you submitted the question, then you'll know it's your question. But I'm going to say what the question is, and then I'm going to give my answer. Now, before I start giving answers, let me be clear. My answers are going to be based on my experience as an HR director and HR overseer, HR manager, a person who oversaw HR at an executive level, and my experience. I am not speaking for anyone's individual HR department. So, what I say may not be what your HR department's rationale is. I'm just going to give you, based on my experience, what it is likely. If it's, especially if it's something where you're asking me why HR might have done something, that's going to be the context. Obviously, I do not work in your HR department. So I cannot say for sure that the reason that I think it is the actual reason. So please do not, make decisions or especially life-changing decisions on the basis of any answer that I give you here. It's just general advice. It is also not legal advice. It is not intended to guide you in terms of the law in any way. And it is really not intended for you to go run off and, quit your job, make any pronouncement at work. It's just for you to use this information to inform yourself, especially in terms of how you move with human resources. China, hi, how are you? Thanks for being here. And you can say hello in the chat as you join if you wish. You don't have to. Okay, so let's go to the first question because we only got 45 minutes and I'm about to put my timer on before we get started because I actually have another call that I have to get on, so I can't go over too far over tonight. So I'm going to put my timer on right now so that I do not go too far over. Okay. So we are starting right now. And the first question is uh, how long can someone be placed on suspension pending investigation? This is a good question. Now, hi, ladies. How long can someone be placed on suspension pending investigation? And the honest answer to that is it depends. One of the things I'm going to say that I hope you all remember is your employee handbook is the Bible at your job, right? You need to read it when they give it to you. If it's online, which a lot of HR departments are putting these things online and it's not to benefit you, it benefits them. You still have a responsibility to log on, download your handbook. I suggest downloading it in its entirety, transferring it to a jump drive or something, and taking it home with you and reading it, right? Because a lot of these questions, the answers are in your handbook, but you won't know that if you don't bother to read it. They gave it to you for a reason. They have these policies for a reason. Make sure you read it. But when it comes to something like a suspension pending investigation, it really has to do with what they're investigating and how egregious the act is. Because for someone to suspend you in the first place means that you did something to violate a policy and or a law that could put the company on the hook, because there are a lot of things that happen in the workplace that get investigated but people don't get suspended because of them. So if they put you on suspension pending an investigation, that means something serious occurred. So what I would say is, ask them. If they tell you you're going to be on suspension, ask how long the suspension is going to be. If they say indefinite, you ask how long you're going to know before they make how long is it going to be before they make a decision? It shouldn't be an indefinite suspension, right? But if it's something serious and your HR department, which is just acting on the behalf of your management, by the way, tells you that you're going to be suspended pending investigation, first of all, that's not a good thing for you. And secondly, they should tell you how long it is, but they don't have to tell you how long it is. And that's the thing. I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that they have to have due process at work. Due process is a legal principle. It doesn't necessarily have to occur in your workplace. The most things that HR has to do, they have to do because there's a law that exists. Anything that is not protected because of a law, they don't have to do it. So y'all need to remember that. If a law doesn't require it, they don't have to do it. But if they have a policy in their book and they say, these are the things that we will do before we fire you, for example, or if you violate a rule, these are the steps that would be followed. They have to follow those steps and they have to follow it and apply it in a fair manner, right? Because if they apply it and it results in has a discriminatory result, then they might have a problem. But they don't have, there's no law that says if they suspend you, they have to let you come back by a certain time. So it's really at the discretion of the employer. So yes, they can suspend you and they don't necessarily have to tell you how long it would be. And so I can't give you an answer to say how long it should be if you get suspended pending investigation, because it really depends on what the underlying problem is, what happened that resulted in the suspension. And that's the basis that they're going to determine how long it's going to take them to investigate it and how long it's going to take them to make a decision about whether, based on the findings, you get to come back to work or whether you get permanently terminated. Okay. So that's my answer. How long can someone be placed on suspension? It depends. That's the answer. It depends on the underlying problem. It depends on what they're investigating. But clearly, if they suspend you, then the situation is serious. Okay. Next question. I'm a manager and I just found out that my boss is reporting false information about my performance and conduct to the CEO. How should I handle this? So, and this person went on to someone else made comments, and this person went on to explain the situation a little bit more detailed. But what I would say is the first line of defense always, if you hear somebody said something, or you heard someone say it, or someone came back and told you that someone said it, I don't believe in the idea of making assumptions. Have a conversation with your boss. And I know that's the scariest thing in the world. It's easy to talk about something, it's harder to actually do it. But from my perspective, if you believe your boss is saying things that are untrue about you, you need to ask them if they said it, and you need to ask them why they're saying it. And then you need to document the conversation. Right now, in the context of where she said it came up in a meeting where the CEO repeated the thing that the person allegedly said, I think she still needs to have a conversation with her boss and let them know that what they said is problematic and that she has concerns about it and why she has concerns about it. And then she should also correct the information with the CEO, because if it's now public, she has a right to go to the CEO and say, well, that's not true, and say what is true and put it in writing. You're going to hear me say that all the time. Put it in writing. And if there's any retaliation or punitive action by your boss after you confront them, then you need to take it to HR and file a complaint, right? But first, you need to confront them with what they said, ask them why they said it, right? That's what you have to do. In my opinion, that's what you should do. And make sure you document every step of it. So after you have the verbal conversation with them, write an email confirming the conversation you had with them. Hey, thank you for talking to me today about the concern I had about the thing that you said to such and such. And you write whatever the resolution in the conversation was, if there was any, what the next steps will be, and you keep that. You create a trail. And so if they do anything, you can then present that as that not only did they do the thing, but you talk to them about it and then they doubled down on it by retaliating or whatever they did. But the right thing, in my opinion, to do in a situation like that is confront it. So if the CEO brought it to your attention, then you need to correct it with the CEO. And you also need to go tell your boss about it. So you need to say, CEO said such and such to that you said such and such. I was very concerned about it because it's not true. You and I both know that's not true. I would very much appreciate it if you would go and correct what you said to them. I've already corrected it, but it would be helpful to me if you would correct it as well. If they get belligerent, if they get whatever, that doesn't matter. You put that on the table and then you go write them an email and you document it. If they do anything else, you go to HR and you complain. And I'd copy the CEO because now the CEO knows about it too, because you already told them it's not true. That's honestly how I would deal with it. I don't believe in whispering and talking about things. If somebody says something about you that's not true, you need to confront the thing and correct it. Okay. Thank you for doing this. And then this person sent a 5-part questions. One thing to be clear, you get one question per person. You don't get to send me 5 different questions. So I'm going to look at all the questions that they asked and I'm going to answer one of the questions. I'm just going to decide which one it's going to be. So, have you seen someone successfully pass a PIP? If they do, what eventually happens to them after they have successfully completed a PIP? This is a good question. So the question is, have you seen employees successfully pass a PIP? If they do, what eventually happens to them after they successfully complete a PIP? And a PIP, for those who may not be aware, is what we call a performance improvement plan, right? Now, in your manual, employee handbook, on your HR website, whatever, they're going to tell you that the purpose of the performance improvement plan is to help you improve your performance. That is a lie. I'm going to say that again. Your company is going to tell you that the primary purpose of the performance improvement plan is to help you improve your performance. That is a lie. That's not why it is there. The primary reason of it is for HR to document the performance issue and allow them to say that when they terminated you, they did it for cause and that it was not wrongful. Especially if you belong to a protected class or have a protected characteristic, you're more likely to end up on a PIP before you are fired because the company wants to make sure that they can justify firing you and get in front of any claim that you might make that they fired you due to your protected characteristic or class. To remind you, a protected characteristic or class are those that were listed in Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. Not Civil Rights Act, but Title VII. Yeah, is it the Civil Rights Act? I believe so, but it's Title VII. It's known as Title VII. It's part of a law. And it lists the characteristics and classes that you're not allowed to discriminate against someone because of its race and ethnicity, its gender, its age. And age came in when the Age and Discrimination Act, Age Discrimination and Employment Act, age, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, um, ability, um, pregnancy is one of them also. There might be one that I'm missing. Gender identity is a newer one. Um, but the ones in Title VII are the ones that I previously mentioned. Some of others have also been implied into there because of actions by the Department later, other laws that have passed after Title VII. So the reason that employers will put you on a performance improvement plan is to protect themselves from claims of discrimination and wrongful termination. It is not because they want to improve your performance. For that reason, most people never successfully get out of a PIP because the intention of the PIP is not for you to get out of it successfully. There are occasions where someone might, right? There are rare occasions. I would not say it never happens. But for the most part, the reason that you are put on a PIP is to allow your employer to check certain boxes before they fire you. Okay? So, have I seen employees successfully pass a PIP? I think in my entire career, maybe once or twice, right? Um, but for the most part, when it is used in order to document performance issues so that they have the grounds to fire a person. Okay. So that's why I always say if you're on a PIP, you should be concerned because the reason they put you on it is because they want to fire you. So if you believe that the reason you've been put on a PIP is for discriminatory purposes, or that a discriminatory act is at the root of whatever caused you to be on the PIP, let's say you complained about something that the employer is doing that is illegal, and then they put you on a PIP, that can be considered retaliation, and you should act quickly if they put you on the PIP because their plan is to fire you. And there's no law that says the PIP has to be for a certain amount of time. It's for whatever amount of time they want to make it. But again, whatever amount of time they say it's supposed to be, it should be relatively consistent per employee, because then they could be accused of discrimination on that ground as well. So usually they will have a process and they will put you on it, but it's usually a pretty rapid process because the end game for the employer 9 times out of 10 is to terminate you. They just need to paper it before they do it. Um, Next question. Here's another one that this person asked that I thought was a good question. Can you not sign a PIP? What if you refuse to sign? I get asked this a lot. It doesn't matter whether you sign the PIP. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be on one. So you refusing to be on it will probably just antagonize the situation, but it doesn't make a difference. A lot of people think that if they sign something, it means that they're agreeing to it. Okay. I want to remind people that I'm not answering any questions that they type in the comments. There is a process for this. I explained it at the top of this. I'm not going to answer your questions. So please don't bother to put any in the comments because I'm not going to answer it. If you have a question, you should have submitted it before this session. If you didn't submit it before this session, then you're going to have to wait until I announce the next one, and then you can submit a question. Okay, back to the regularly scheduled program. Can you not sign a PIP? What if you refuse to sign it? Signing a PIP doesn't mean that you agree, and signing a PIP doesn't make any difference in terms of whether you're on a PIP or not. Your employer doesn't need your consent to put you on a PIP. And your signing doesn't mean your consent. But if you are concerned that by signing you are indicating your consent, then you can sign your name and under it write that you do not want your signature to be mistaken for your agreement with anything in the PIP. You can write that down. But honestly, most of the time, like any well run HR department usually has a little caption for performance evaluations, anything related to performance, where they'll say your signature indicates acknowledgement of receipt of the performance review or of the performance action. It does not indicate agreement. But of course, there are lots of organizations, because there are lots of really poorly run organizations, that may not have that on this under the signature box. So if you don't feel comfortable signing, you can write something indicating that you don't agree, but that you're signing because you were directed to sign. But it's really an acknowledgement of receipt. It doesn't mean that you agree. So not signing isn't going to change anything. It'll just probably antagonize and exacerbate whatever the situation is. It doesn't win you any points either way. So I would recommend that if you're asked to sign a PIP, there are things that you should do relevant to responding to it. And I've done videos about that. But I don't think signing it or not signing it really makes a difference. So if you're asked to sign it, but just indicate that you're acknowledging the receipt of it. You are not agreeing with the contents. Okay. Next question. This is a good one. Can HR shred the documents in your personnel file? The short answer is yes, they can. Right now, Again, unless there's a law in your state that indicates that they're not allowed to do it, they can do it, right? Now, if there is any policy in their handbook about how your records are supposed to be retained and they shred your records in violation of that, that could be an issue, especially if they're inconsistent in it and they haven't announced it and stuff just go missing. But to avoid all of that is why I always say you must have copies of everything in your employment file. And I often recommend that employees ask to see the contents of their employment file twice a year. Usually, right after your review is a good time. If your review doesn't fall at the end of the year, if it's a mid year, ask to see it then and ask again to see it at the end of the year or right around the beginning of the year. You have a right to know what's in your employee file. So ask to see it and make sure that what you have in your possession is the same thing that's in the file. And if you see anything in the file that you've never seen before, then you need to ask to get a copy, right? And make sure you get a copy. But because things can go missing, because employers can engage in all kinds of shenanigans, you should not rely on them to retain good records for you, because the only thing they're required to keep is really, I just said I'm not answering any questions, but yet people are coming in here and asking me questions. Some of you, even if you pay me, I'm not going to answer the question. So you need to follow what I said. Okay. And I'm really serious about it because it's not fair to other people who follow the instructions for someone to jump in the line and ask a question tonight when I was very clear about the process for asking questions. Okay. All right. So back to what I was saying. To avoid shenanigans on the part of your employer, make sure that you check your file, that you get copies of what's in your file. When you get hired, I can't tell you how many people I talk to as clients, and I'll ask them a question about something that should be in their file and they have no idea. I'll ask them a question about a policy their employer has or should have, and they have no idea. They've never read their employee handbook. They have no idea. They don't even know where their performance evaluations are. You must always have copies of all your performance reviews in your possession. And when I say in your possession, that means I don't care if you all have a HRIS automated system. That's your your employer's possession. And you could come in one day and be locked out of the entire system. Okay? You do not want that. So when you get your evaluation, you need to keep a copy so that if you go back and look at your file and the evaluation you have in your possession is different from what you see in the file, then you know that there's shenanigans afoot, right? That somebody went and made a change and didn't tell you about it. Somebody added something that you didn't know, and you will know if you periodically ask to see your file. Your employer is supposed to keep your health records separate from your regular file. So when you're looking at your file, what you should be looking at is a file that has your hire documents, that has your performance reviews, that has any personnel actions, things like raises, promotions, demotions, performance notices, PIP documentations, any write-ups, any warnings, any citations for good performance, any letters of any awards, all those kinds of things, professional development, right? All those things should be in your file and you should have copies of all those things. So when something comes up, you can have those things at your disposal to even use them to refute something that an employer might have said that you know not to be true. But if you don't do that stuff, you're not going to know, right, that anything happened until something goes wrong. And you really don't want to be in the situation where you feel under attack and then you're trying to react to all these things that you find out stuff is in your file that ain't supposed to be in there, stuff is missing that should be in there. So to avoid that, stay on top of retaining information in your file. I always tell people, document your workplace from the first day of employment. Do not wait till something goes bad to start keeping a journal. When you get that job, open up a journal on them people. Open up a file on them. You're going to need it. I'm telling you. Open up a file on your home computer and start keeping files. Keep things in your possession. That means you keep a jump drive with you, you download things, make sure you're acting in compliance with your company's policy, but keep copies and records of everything that pertains to your employment in a place that is controlled only by you, not by your employer. Okay? So that's a long answer to a short question. But can HR shred documents in your personnel file? Yes, they can. That's the short answer. Should they be doing it without notifying you? Should they be doing it without having a policy and procedure for doing it? No, they shouldn't, but that don't mean they won't. Employers rely on the ignorance of employees, and they always have. And why do they do that? Because it's a good strategy, because most employees don't bother to know things until it's too late. Don't be one of those employees. Okay. This is a good one too. Can your employer force you to download Paycom on your personnel phone and also force you to use your phone to receive verification codes to log on to their work? Shouldn't there be compensation? Well, my short answer is what there should be and what is often is not the same thing, right? So, can your employer force you to download Paycom? That's a hard thing for me to answer because I don't know the context in which this question is being made. But what I will say is Paycom is a platform that employers use to process payroll. They also use it, some of them use it to store employee files and things like that. So I'm assuming, and I could be wrong, if the person who asked this question is in the comments, you can raise your hand because I don't know what the context of the question is. But I'm going to assume some things and I'm going to answer it on that basis. I'm going to assume that your company is using Paycom to either process your payroll or process your payroll and some other things. And that's pay.com is what they put on here, Paycom. And they want you to be able to access it and do certain things, right? I don't know if you necessarily have to do that. If you have a desktop, you could also always access it through your desktop, I'm imagining, right? If you don't feel comfortable having this information on your personal phone, then I think you should go talk to payroll or talk to HR and ask if there are alternatives, right? Again, people are really afraid to communicate. All of us really love the anonymity of social media and so on. So it's easy to come on here and ask these questions, but you're asking me questions that you should actually be asking your payroll and you should be asking your HR department. And it's nothing to be afraid of. You tell them, I have concerns about this stuff coming to my phone because if there's a hack or something goes wrong for security reasons, I would prefer to not do that. Is there an alternative? Can I use my desktop? Can I do something else instead of having this come to your phone? But the question of compensation, my answer to that is there's a lot of things employers should do, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it. And they sure enough aren't going to pay you to download the app through which you get paid, right? But I do think that you have a right to ask a question about if you have a legitimate concern about having to use your personal device for that purpose, then you should ask if there's an alternative if you do not feel comfortable um, using your personal device to access or submit your timesheet, for example. Is there a way for you to do this over the company system instead of on your phone? You can ask that question. It's a legitimate question to ask. But I don't recommend you ask if you're going to get paid to do it because they're not going to pay you and it's just going to make you be a person that's a problem. And if you don't want to be a person that's a problem, I don't suggest you ask that question. But I do think you should ask them whether there are alternatives to you using your personal device for that purpose, whether you can log on to the company system through the company's computer and submit the information that they want that way, right? Okay. The next question that was asked is, do you think getting the Sherm certification and some years experience in the field is better than a bachelor's degree and no experience in the field? The short answer is yes. I do think so. Now, I don't know if everybody is familiar. I think this person's probably trying to get into HR. Um, this SHRM is a Society for Human Resources Management, I think, is what SHRM stands for. It's a membership association for HR professionals, and they provide different kinds of certifications for people who want to be considered experts in the field of HR. I used to be a SHRM member. I'm not anymore because I just don't think it's useful for me. I'm not saying it's not useful for other people. It's not useful for me. I don't need any certifications from them. Um, but for people who are actively working in HR departments, SHRM can be very useful, and it's a really great place to talk to other people, to get advice, to learn about best practices, that kind of stuff. So if you're trying to break into HR and you don't have a bachelor's degree in a field related to HR and you don't have any experience, then yes, getting some certifications would benefit you and would also probably help you to get hired in the HR area if you have those certifications and you know how to effectively speak about them, right? So yes, I do think getting a SHRM certification and some years of experience, right? But the certifications could probably help you get your foot in the door somewhere, and then you can get the experience that way. But obviously, you need to have a good elevator speech, about yourself, about why you've decided to why you want to break into that field. I'm sorry, my son just called me on the phone. It distracted me. Um, but they want to know, they would want to know, like, why do you want to come into HR and what do you think you're going to bring because you don't have the experience, right? So you want to make sure that if you are breaking into HR, but really this is advice for any field. I'm gonna give you all some free career advice here. If you're trying to break into a field and you don't have any experience, you're going to apply for jobs, your letter of introduction, your email of introduction needs to speak to the reality that you don't have experience and what you are doing or what you have done alternatively to get expertise in that area, right? So don't um just submit an application, because no one's going to take you seriously if you don't address that, right? So I'm sorry, y'all. I have an only child, and he is an adult, but y'all, you know how it is if you're a parent. And he always messages me when I'm in the middle of something. Um, so you know, you don't want to send an application in blindly, and then you feel in your feelings when no one calls you. So one of the ways that you put yourself in front of this stuff is to put together a statement, right, of why you're applying for the job, even though your resume may not reflect exactly what the job says, but you can talk about what other knowledge and skills you have that you think are transferable, right? And certifications in that case would be very, very helpful, because then you can say, I don't have on the job training on this yet, but I have gotten certified in this, and that, and I think that this will enhance my ability to do this, and that. That's in the job description, right? So you want to get in front of that. You don't want to wait for somebody to ask, because they're not going to interview you really if they don't feel that you've addressed those things. A lot of times they won't even call you. So you want to make sure that you submit a statement or a letter, an email, or something that accompanies your resume that speaks to that, and that you use the right keywords in that introductory letter, so that your stuff will get in front of the right person. Okay. So yes, I think SHRM certification helps a lot if you don't have any experience and you don't have a degree um, in HR. Now, last question that I received is, can HR or a recruiter ask an applicant to share their birthday as an ID number for their resume application in the applicant tracking system during the interview process? Can HR or a recruiter ask an applicant to share their birthday as an ID number for their resume application in their applicant tracking system during the interview process? I'm going to say the same thing I said before when someone asked whether HR can shred documents. Whether HR should do something, whether a company should do something, and what they do are often not the same thing. So, in my personal opinion as an HR professional, this is not something that they should do. And honestly, I would say they shouldn't do it, because if someone in the company misuses that information, they could be on the hook for the actions of the person who took someone's birthday and their name and then attempted to use it to do some shady business. So honestly, just from that perspective, I would not tell an applicant to give me their birthday along with their legal name. But apparently someone has done this because that's why someone's asking this question. So what I would suggest that you do is tell the company you're not comfortable with that. That it makes you uncomfortable providing your birthday as an ID. And can you use an alternative number or make a birthday number up? Make it up. Don't give it to them. But I would be upfront about the fact that I'm uncomfortable with it, so I gave them a different number, right? But if you don't feel comfortable doing something, don't do it. And if the company's response is anything but understanding and accommodating, you don't want to work there anyway. These are red flags, my dear. Because one thing I would say that's an HR department that's not being run very well. That they would even ask you to give your birthday as an ID number, unless they're just asking for, if they're asking for just the first four digits, that might be okay. But if they're asking for your full birthday, that would be concerning to me, right? So if they're just asking for the month and the year, I actually don't think that's a big deal. Even though I still would, if I was over HR department, I wouldn't be willing, I would not agree to do that. But if they are asking for your full birthday with the year, I would decline to do that. And I don't think you should be afraid to say why you have discomfort with that and why you are concerned about it. And a person that has any damn sense should understand it. You know, you obviously you do so respectfully. You don't be belligerent about it. You just say that, I have some concerns, especially with, the way that people steal people's identities and so on. And so would it be okay if I submitted a different 6-digit number or 8-digit number for my ID number? That's how I would suggest that you deal with it. But it's not a question of can they can ask for whatever they want to ask, but it doesn't mean that you have to agree to it. And like I said, if the response is belligerent or anything like that, I would just say not to be bothered with them because that wouldn't be a good sign. So, what time is it? Oh, okay, we did pretty good. So, those are the questions that came in for this week. And I see a whole bunch of questions that people have submitted in the comments. And like I said before, I'm not answering any of those questions. I'm not answering them. I feel that I really do. I believe in boundaries. Y'all have heard me say that a lot. And I take it very seriously. I created a process for doing this, and I wanted to make sure that it was a fair process for everybody. And so I will decide whether or not I want to do this based on the comments that I get after this live. And if you would like to submit whatever your questions are in the comments for the next one, I'm happy to answer the question then. But I don't think it's fair for me to answer other questions when people took the time to follow the instructions and submit the questions in advance. And so, like I said, I want everyone to submit their questions ahead of time so I have time to look at them and think about them. I'm not doing this on the fly. And so if you did not do that and you're submitting your questions in the comments, I appreciate that you have questions and you can submit them during the next live if there is one. Or you can always book a discovery call and ask your question that way. But I'm doing this, on my own time for free. And so I get to set the rules and I get to set the boundaries for it. And that's what I'm doing. So I think I answered everything that I was asked. Da, 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 da. I think I answered all the questions that I think are appropriate that I was given. And so, I hope that this was helpful for you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Just going through the comments real quick. How many people are in here? There are, my questions are covering up the number. I'm sorry. Oh wow, 77 of you. How nice. Thanks for all you being here. I hope this was helpful. This has been fun actually. I think the questions that I asked were really good ones. So, if you have more questions, I will announce when the next one is going to be. Um, I'm not sure when that's going to be because I have some travel coming up, and so I'm not sure when the next one will be. I will try to see if I can do the next one. If I do another one, I'll try to see if I can do it before I start traveling. But I'm going to try to do this once a month at the beginning of each month. If I'm doing it, it'll be at the beginning of the month. So I'm going to try to do it um, at the beginning of the month. So I will announce the next one. I will say when the date is going to be. When you see the post in the community, because that's where it's going to go, put your questions all in there. You can ask whatever question you want to ask that is related to HR. Okay? If you're having a problem with your manager, I'm not going to answer that question. Questions related to human resources and your interactions with human resources and things that human resources may have or have not done that you have questions about, you can ask me during these lives. That's why they're called Can HR Do That? Because I'm trying to give you all a better idea of how human resources functions and why they function the way that they do, and some of the things that they do or don't do that you may think they're not allowed to do that in fact they can do. Um, and some things that they do that they're not allowed to do, right? So I hope that some of the answers that I gave shed some light for you guys about how some of this stuff works in HR. And so next time I will try to do this again. And I hope that next time you guys will submit your questions. I got a lot of good questions. Please, one question per person. Do not send me 5-part questions. Do not send me questions asking me about the EEOC. Don't ask me no questions about your lawyer's demand letters. Don't ask me anything that doesn't have to do with HR because I'm not going to answer the questions. Those are my limits on that. And I am very serious about them. Okay. If you have questions about a specific issue that is pertains just to you and is not a general HR question, then you can feel free to visit my website, book a discovery call, pay the discovery call fee, and then you have me for 20 minutes to talk to me about whatever it is that is going on, and I will make an assessment of whether it's something that I can help you solve, or if it's a really simple thing. A lot of times I'll just give an answer right on the call. So but if it's a general HR question related to whether HR can do something or can't do something, then make sure you save it for the next session and I'll be happy to answer it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this live. This was fun. Um, and we're at 6:12 and we started at 5:30, so it's almost exactly 45 minutes. So I hope that this was fun. It was fun actually for me. So I hope it was fun for you. You guys can tell me what you think of it in the comments. Those of you who are going to watch it as a replay, please also let me know whether it was helpful to you. And I'll see you guys at the next live. Okay? Have a good night. Bye, everybody.